I think continuing to talk, continuing to not, to open these conversations. We have athletes now talking about mental health. This was unheard of even just a couple years ago. And I think keeping talking about that, I think we need to start thinking about relationships between the pairs, pair skating and ice dance. We need to talk about how these relationships are formed, how to make them healthier. We need to keep talking about violence, sexual violence, physical violence, psychological violence, because they are still part of the skating, and as long as we keep ignoring them, they're gonna stay.
Welcome to a special edition of Milan Magic. I'm Christine Brennan of USA Today. And this is such a special topic, important topic to so many people in the skating world and throughout society. And to me as a journalist, the issue of this sport, women in the sport, control, body image, issues that need to be talked about all of the time. And we're going to do that here with Olympic gold medalist Gabby Papadakis. Gabby, welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you, and I've gotta start out in kind of a fun way. Of course, you have a new book. I wanna
Yeah,
ask how the book tour is going. You are
yeah.
French, of course,
Mhm.
and the book title is, of course, in French. The book is in French, and I have read at least 2 different English translations of this book title, "So as not to disappear,"
Yeah.
or I wrote them down, or "In order to not disappear."
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
it's a very important topic, so we're not making light of that, but what's the title of your book in English?
I don't even know myself. I usually say "to not disappear" just because it's just a literal translation. I find that some people feel like it doesn't encapsulate the real meaning of the French title. I heard also "so as not to disappear," "here to stay." Somebody got really creative with that, but I like it as well. So I tend to say "to not disappear," but you know. We'll see. We'll see when it actually gets translated.
Well, and that's my next question. Right now, it's just in French, right? Do you have
Yes.
a plan to have it get translated into English?
Yeah, so my editor and I would love to, obviously. I think we know that there's some great interest, and it's very important to me to have the message from my book be for as much people as it can, and for the English speaking community and for everybody. However, we're still looking for a an English language editing house to wanna buy their rights and translate the book, so we'll see.
Well, as I from just looking at your social media and conversations and stories, I've gotta believe that there's a publishing house. Having written a few books myself, I've gotta believe that's the case. But how is the book doing? How is the book tour going for you?
Yeah, so I spent 2 weeks and a half in Paris, for the press tour. I went to a couple cities in France as well, including my hometown to do some, signing and meetings and meeting with people and stuff. It went very well. The I'm not gonna lie, the first week was a bit intense and stressful. Um, and then as I think as soon as I started going into the cities and going into libraries and meeting people and having this conversations with people who read the book and stuff like that, that was pretty magical, and I had really, really, great moments there for sure.
And you're speaking to us, I think, are you in London right now? Is that correct?
Yes, I am in London, yeah.
And is that a book tour or just
No, there's just, rest. Instead of Milan, it's just rest, yeah.
well, having been on book tours, obviously, yeah, rest is a big part of a book tour. There's no doubt about that because it is. Why did you write the book?
So, I first of all, I always loved writing, and I always knew I would write a book, even when I was a kid. I used to think it would be fiction, like, that was my first idea, and then, as I as I had my life in figure skating and started, having a lot of experiences that I wanted to talk about, and having a lot of thoughts and understandings of a lot of things that I felt the need to share. Then I started having the idea of writing a memoir, essay, like all those kind of things that I would permit me to just really share those things with the world, and I really felt that need. Um, and but however, after I retired, I thought it would take me, I don't know, like 5, 10 years. Like I really was like, okay, this is I have a lot to say, but I'm gonna wait till it matures more, and until I don't feel so in danger to speak and all of that. And in I was in 2024, my current editor, um, she messaged me on Instagram and she was like, "Hey, I've been following your career for a bit. I was wondering if you would want to write a book." So we went to have a drink and she explained to me how it worked, and she asked me if I would want a ghostwriter. I was like, No, I'm gonna write on my own." Um, and then she left me some time to sit with it and think. And at the time I was still like, I was torn between like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm ready." And at the same time, this is an amazing opportunity that it would be silly not to take. Um, and so I stayed there. I stayed with the idea for a little bit. And right after that, I remember having two conversations, especially one with two women who told me such similar stories to mine. And stories that were really heartbreaking, and I remember both told me, without knowing that I just had been offered a book deal, they both told me, "I think you should," they were like, "Please write a book. Please tell these stories because we're gonna like people are gonna listen to you. And we need these stories to be told, and we need these things to be out, and we need people talking about this." And I think after those two conversations, I was like, if I don't sign that book deal and start writing my book, I'm just letting these people down. And I realized I couldn't live with myself if I did that, and I started writing the book.
And of course, the book came out just, as we're speaking here, as the
Mhm.
Olympic Games have just gotten going. The book came out several weeks ago, before the Olympic Games. And of course, as is the case with almost any topic in our world, especially one as important as this, that, the social media and others, I want to be critical about the
Mhm.
timing, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'll say this, and I'd love to get your comment too, but as of course, this book came out right before the Olympics. Um,
Actually, it was supposed to came out during the Olympics. This was supposed to come out on the 1st of February, but we advanced the book of 2 weeks because, I was supposed to be, at the Olympics with NBC, so
Right, but any this is actually I mean, the publisher controls this, and I think for anyone who doesn't know about how this works, of course, you're in contact with your editor and your of course, all the time, as I have been, but that's the decision of the publisher. When they buy the book, they make those decisions. So for anyone out there who's watching or listening, who is somehow that this is a conspiracy by you to have the book come out before the Olympics. Well, first of all, that's not your decision. And number two, if you're for capitalism and making money in business in this world of ours, then the book publisher gets to make that decision,
yeah,
obviously. And it would be crazy not to have the book come out at a time when there is interest in the sport and in the Olympic world that you have been such a big part of. So,
yeah.
um, anything else obviously, yeah, I'm a columnist, of course, I give my opinion, for USA Today and CNN and here on this podcast, but anything else to add on that? I mean, were you surprised that people were somehow accusing you of, using the Olympics as some kind of a prop for yourself?
I was a little bit. I really did not expect people to get so hyped about this issue, because first of all, I think people underestimate the amount of time it takes to write a book. So people were like, "Oh, she wrote a book just because her ex-partner is gonna be there." I started writing the book way before he even started coming back. So it has nothing to do with that at all. And also, yes, the timing of the book, like when my editor reached out to me, that was in the idea of writing a book that would come out during the Olympics, because that's how releasing books work. You have to do it in relations to a certain timing. And it was also important to me anyway, because I think that, I love the Olympics. Obviously, it's been my whole life, the sport and all of that. And as much as there are amazing things happening at the Olympics, I think we also need at the same time to have in the conversations the other voices and other realities that are usually being hidden. And I think this is way more powerful to have my book come out at the Olympics, to so that my story exists alongside the medals and the spectacle and all of that. So we kind of see all sides of this event and what it takes to build these events and for them to exist. So yeah.
Well, and, I certainly couldn't agree more, as you know from my reporting and what USA Today we have done on this topic over the years and right here already, asking questions that need to be asked. Let's dive into the topics that you're talking about, but I'm gonna start actually not with your book,
Mhm.
but with someone I think you know, Ashley Wagner, the
Mhm.
US figure skater, three-time national champ, Olympic team bronze medalist, and world silver medalist. And Ashley came forward to me at USA Today in 2019
Mhm.
with a horrifying story of sexual assault, alleged sexual assault,
Mhm.
and she named the person who did it, John Coughlin, who tragically had already taken his own life, just beyond awful. He had been accused of other, sexual misconduct, and he was actually, on a temporary suspension by US Safe Sport when he took his life. John Coughlin, the two-time US pairs champion. Ashley Wagner, when she was 17, had been at a camp in Colorado Springs. All the skaters were there, and, as she told me and USA Today in a very big article and video, she talked about how he climbed into bed with her and, was forced kissing. It's horrible. Forced kissing, groping, and she had to push him away, and Ashley Wagner had the courage, as you have the courage, to speak out and come forward, and I wanna read what she said. She said, "This is about the environment in figure skating that allowed for that act to happen. I want the issue to feel real to people and for them to understand the dynamics of my sport where uncomfortable power imbalances thrive to this day."
Mhm.
What what's what do you think of those words, and how do you put them into context, from the book that you wrote?
Yeah. Um there's so much to say. First of all, I've always admired Ashley for doing what she did. Although at the time, even though I admire her profoundly, that also made me very, I think, uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that to say that she shouldn't have done that. Obviously, no. I'm saying that it stirred up some things in myself that made me forced to see things for the way they are, because I think at the time I was still a bit in denial about the systemic issues in figure skating and about what my experiences were. And I remember struggling to engage with that story at the time. And I find that now I'm in the position that maybe Ashley was at the time, where it feels very lonely because you're speaking about something that people are not willing to speak about and are not willing to really face. And in some way, I understand Ashley better. I also, how do I say that? Mm, I understand the discomfort because I've been there. I've been there when Ashley came out. Even though I supported her, I was still feeling very uncomfortable engaging with that story, and I felt the same way as well with Sarah Abitbol when she came out with her book in France, accusing her old, coach of sexual abuse when she was 15. When that story came out, I supported her internally, but I struggled so hard engaging with it because it just reminded me of my own experiences, and forced me to, yeah, face issues that I wasn't willing to face and I was still in denial about. And now that I'm in that position of the person who's stalking and I'm having to deal with that reaction from other people, of people not be willing to engage with my story because it makes them uncomfortable, either because it reminds them of their own or because they're so used to be in denial about it, or they're so used to not be willing to engage with it because it's so uncomfortable. And it's been a very, very interesting experience for that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's as I said, let's dive into a little bit of your book. You have some very, very difficult stories to tell about your own sexual assault. Would would you care to share, a little bit about that? Again, the book is you do tell these stories, but for those who haven't had a chance to read the book or might not ever read it, could you tell us, just as much as you'd like to, about what you had to deal with?
Yeah. I don't wanna go too much in the topic because the reason why I wrote the book was because I wanted to have, the pages and all the words to be able to explain what my experiences were with all the complexity and nuance that I needed, and that's why I did it in a book and not in an interview. So I think I'm just gonna frame it as like, I went through 2 sexual assault in my life. One was in the world of figure skating from someone who was a coach and choreographer, not my coach or choreographer, but someone in the sport, when I was 18 and he was much, much older. And it's mostly I wanted to write about it as well because it was way before the Me Too movement. It was way before we had any words to talk about these things and even explain them to ourselves. It's something that I've recovered from now, but I could only recover from it and heal from it until I was able to name the assault for what it really was. And that took over 10 years before I was able to look back and be like, "Oh, this was a sexual assault." And before I was able to do that, I could not heal from it and I could not recover from it. It was stuck in my body. Um, and why I was able to put a word on it and heal from it and recover from it is because we had the Me Too movement and we had an enormous amount of people and women starting speaking about their experience in public and offering these experiences to other people. So we're able to collectively recognize an issue, whether it's collective or personal, and we have an opportunity to also heal from it and get justice and get all those things. And so that is also why I wanted to speak about it, is because it is unfortunately so common. As sad as it is to say, it is so common. It's an enormous issue that many, many, many people go through. And as long as we don't talk about it, as long as it's taboo, as long as also we treat it as like an anomaly, we I don't think we can recover from it. I don't think we can heal from it. I don't think we can protect ourselves or girls or boys as well from it. I think we need to reckon with that collective issue.
I think a lot of people who are watching or listening who maybe follow skating or maybe don't, that they don't haven't thought of this, a lot of what's going on in skating, in particular in this way. There are the pairs, which is, of course, a man and a woman, and there's ice dance, which is a man and a woman. Obviously, there's singles, and that's, of course, separate, the men's event, the women's event. Ashley Wagner, of course, was a single skater, so this is pervasive, it can happen, it's happening, allegedly, in many, many places in the sport of figure skating.
Mhm,
Obviously, gymnastics, we know the horrors of Larry Nassar, hundreds and hundreds of young women abused by him, so this is throughout youth sport, it's throughout American culture, it's throughout worldwide, French culture, worldwide, obviously. And that's why we're talking about it because this is a piece of our culture that is obviously right in the spotlight now.
mhm,
And again, thanks to your book coming forward to tell these stories, when it is pairs and ice dance, you've got the man and you've got, I know you say this, many others do, many more women than
mhm,
men.
mhm,
And there's a horrible story in the United States of a young woman named Bridget Namiatka who actually has passed away,
mm,
and the abuse that she suffered, as because of the concern of keeping a partner, a male partner, in the house because, of course, the that male skating partner is gold, is so valuable to the young girl, young woman, because he could just go and skate with another woman. Is that part of this conversation, in your opinion? The idea of control, power, body image, all the things you discuss in the book, um, is does it stem from just the nature of the sport, especially with ice dance and pairs?
I think I think it it's impossible to explain with just one element. I think it's just a web of different issues and different reasons of why they exist, and nothing can be tackled by like one angle, I think. However, what I realized also going through thinking about my experience, trying to recover and heal from what I've been through, etc. um I was trying to understand as well, why did this happen? How did how yeah, how did that power imbalance start to happen? How did nobody intervene? How did nobody protect me, for example, from certain things? And I think I tried to look back on what are the reasons for that, and in order to think about how can it change. I think a lot of things can be changed from at the roots. Um, I for sure think that as long as we need to pair women and men together to form a couple and to do high level skating in ice dance, especially in pairs as well, but in ice dance especially, because ice dancers, like, I've never learned to jump. Ice dance was my only path. Like, I can do a cross roll, I can do I can do all these things. I cannot jump, therefore ice dance was my only path, and I think for ice dancers it's even more so than pairs, even though in pairs the issue exists as well. But as long as we need to pair women and men together, girls and boys together, and that women and girls are way more in the sport than men are, that creates a mathematical power imbalance. Just from the start, it's logical. Like, you cannot escape it. If if that happens, the boys are treated like they are to be protected and kept at all costs. And girls are treated as replaceable, because that's what they are. Girls are replaceable in that mathematical power imbalance. Now, imagine that as kids, we grow up in this dynamic. We grew up in these dynamics. And this is nobody's ever told me I was replaceable, but it is something that you feel. We're not stupid when we grow up. We know what the stakes are. We understand how the sport works. We know that coaches will do everything to keep the boys in their clubs. And that means, that means sometimes protecting them from the consequences of their actions, therefore never teaching them how to behave properly and how to treat other people properly. And we teach women that if they want to have a chance, they have to accept everything. They can never say no, they can never push back, they can never ask for more. They have to tolerate everything because that's their only chance to keep the partner they have if they're lucky to find it. um how can you grow up as healthy, well balanced adults when when you grew your roots in that dynamic? It's impossible. These relationships start with a base that is not healthy at all. And nobody on the way intervenes because coaches do not have the tools to deal with these kind of relationships. I think that coaches, federations, like everybody around those relationships have their own agenda. They have their own um ambitions uh that cloud their judgment and that puts them in a big conflict of interest when it comes to protecting the athletes. um we as kids, this is literally like an arranged marriage, which we are given no tools to deal with. We're given no example of what a healthy relationship look like. We're giving no tools of communication. Um, so it's just, I think for me, that's like thinking about that. This is like a recipe for disaster that leads to all kinds of problems. And as long as we don't, I think, as long as we don't tackle um, the roots of that issue, it's going to be a really hard problem to solve.
You have been, criticized, attacked by some, for sure, in social media. I mean, that's it's there's a lot of people getting attacked, but you've gotten a lot the last few weeks because of your book. Everything you just said, again, for those who don't follow skating as much as some might, who are watching and listening to us here on our
Mhm,
special edition of Milan Magic, Gabby, um, those words have been told to me by others dozens of times. This is not just it is your story, and we're so glad you're talking to us here, but
mhm,
this is the story of dozens, probably hundreds of women
mhm,
like you who
mhm,
don't quite have the platform you have, who
mhm,
are not Olympic gold and Olympic silver medalist and five-time world champion as you are. So for those who are scoffing or listening, and that's our world, right? People, come on. Um, as a journalist who's covered this sport for, gosh, what, 30, almost I guess 38 years, but also as someone who's delved into these topics for the last 10 to 12 years, um, this is real. This is real, and what you're describing is absolutely what I have found in my reporting, and
mhm.
so, I just wanted to make sure to say that because, there are a lot of people out there who don't wanna listen or don't want to believe,
Yeah.
the very significant issues. It's the gorgeous sparkles and sequins, right, that we're watching, and it's all the happiness on the ice, and so few wanna see what's going on behind the curtain. Uh, and you have pulled that curtain back,
Mhm.
and as others have. Again, we talked about Ashley Wagner. There are women and families that have come forward. The terrible allegations of Morgan Cyprus, sending lewd photos to a 13-year-old. I know this is tough language for some to hear. We reported that at USA Today. We broke that story at USA Today, the consequences for the coaches, at least suspension for a while, and he then was basically gone from the sport. These are real issues, and I'm saying this because, of course, now you were working for NBC, and, I saw the information that came out on social media, that you were then let go by NBC. You were no longer working with NBC. NBC, um, here at the Olympic Games, and, the fact was that they were saying, and it appears to be the case, that they did not want to have you commentating on ice dance, the reigning gold medalist. Of course, your former partner, Guillaume Cizeron, is now skating with a different partner, Laurence, Fournier Beaudry, and they are the biggest challengers to Americans Madison Chock and Evan Bates. And uh, my point, and I want to get your point, but I'll go first just to set the stage. I retweeted awful announcing the Twitter X, account actually broke that new or the news. I saw the news there, and I tweeted out, "You shouldn't be fired by NBC. They should be thrilled to have you to discuss these important issues." And I even thought in studio, maybe you don't commentate on your former partner, uh, but to have that opportunity to talk about these issues. NBC had that. They had you, and then they didn't want to have that conversation. Do you see that as a I know you're in the midst of this is about you, but do you see that as a real I see it as a terrible mistake by NBC and a real missed opportunity for them to really talk about it such an important issue in our culture. Do you see it the same way? Do you have any comment on that?
Thank you for saying that. I I don't tend to really think about what NBC should do or should have done, or because I don't, I've had this job for over a year and I loved it, but I'm not a TV specialist and I don't know exactly how that world works and what goes on behind the scenes and what kind of so I'm not the one to say that. However, I think it's a bigger societal issue, because we often wonder why survivors don't speak out about abuse and why things don't change. And this is because it has tremendous negative impact on the survivors' lives. And as long as a society we don't do anything to change that, um things things won't change. And ignoring the problems don't make them go away. I think a lot of people in the skating world think that if we talk about the issues too much it will drive people away from the sport, but I first of all I don't think that is true, and second of all, where are our priorities? I think that it's better that people get scared and don't put their kids in a sport rather than they are leave the sport deeply traumatized forever. I think we need to protect the people that are in the sport before caring about the image and the PR and the sparkle and the dreamland that we want skating to be. And I think that this is the bigger thing that we need to reckon with, is that skating needs to belong to skaters first and foremost.
And, for me, I mean, just looking again at NBC's decision, and I have lots of friends at NBC and people I've known for a long time and have talked to them about this. The You write a book, it is your truth. You're a woman who is working for NBC,
Mhm.
and then you get let go, fired, whatever the right word is, because you wrote that book, because you told that story. Um, I mean, that's just well, but you were silenced or they didn't want you because you told that story. Um, that is, I'll say that, I'm a journalist and I will, yeah, it's just, that's what NBC did. Um, a woman writes a book about a very important topic that is totally crucial to these Olympic Games, and they didn't want you. Did they offer you an opportunity to be in the studio? to maybe talk about issues after, not just commentate, but did they offer you another opportunity in any way?
No.
Right. Guillaume Cizeron, of course, you talk about him. Uh, you talk about control. You talk about how difficult it was for you with dealing with him. You also had obviously you had a long, long relationship as partners on the ice, and an incredibly successful one. Um, can you speak about him, or is his cease and desist order, which of course was part of NBC's decision making, um, can you speak at all about him now?
Yeah. I mean, in the book, I mostly talked about my experience in that relationship. And that was a dynamic that was profoundly harmful and dangerous to me. That took me a very, very, very long time to understand and put words on it. And it took me to really, really dangerous situations before I was able and forced to not only see it for what it was, but I had to leave. And I think in my book I was trying to understand and write about how these dynamics creep in rather in a partnership and in a relationship, and without the people involved seeing it, without people around seeing it either. um and how these dynamics can become incredibly dangerous.
Your hope for the future. I mean, eh, there's there's so much good in skating.
Yeah.
Obviously, people are enjoying it very much. It's your whole career. You've loved it. So, as you look ahead, um, is there hope? Is there a positive? Are you thinking that better days can be ahead on these very important topics of the power imbalance, control? Are
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely think so. Otherwise I wouldn't have read my book at all. I'm definitely hopeful about, what skating can be. I think it has evolved a lot in the past years, even whilst I was in it. I think there's still a lot to be done. Um, we're talking a lot more now about um, same-sex skating, for example, which I think could resolve a lot of these issues. It wouldn't be magical, obviously. It's not the only solution to all these problems, but I think this could open some doors and this could alleviate some of these power imbalances. I think continuing to talk, continuing to not, to open these conversations. We have athletes now talking about mental health. This was unheard of even just a couple years ago. And I think keeping talking about that, I think we need to start thinking about relationships between the pairs, pair skating and ice dance. We need to talk about how these relationships are formed, how to make them healthier. We need to keep talking about violence, sexual violence, physical violence, psychological violence, because they are still part of the skating, and as long as we keep ignoring them, they're gonna stay. And I think we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the trauma that we face. We need to talk about those kind of things. We need to keep talking about those things and not be afraid that talking about these things will drive people away from the sport, because this is not true. This is not true. And the only way to resolve these issues and make the sport a better place is to talk about them. So I think this will keep going, and I'm hopeful it will. And yeah, again, I would not have written my book if I didn't believe that we could have a beautiful sport free from these issues. And as much as it will take some work and some time, I do think it's possible.
Well, Gabriella Papadakis, obviously Olympic gold medalist from Beijing just 4 years ago, Olympic silver medalist 8 years ago, five-time world champion, and now celebrated maybe best-selling author. Hopefully that's happening or in the cards for you. I know from the crowds you've had at your book signings, the book, is incredibly successful and is so important. It's just another important conversation for our culture, not just sports, but really for, people, but not only in France, but of course around the world, um, so as not to disappear or to not disappear. Obviously, the English translation, people can find this book obviously online, right, in
Mhm.
French at this point,
Yes. Mhm.
and then you can buy it wherever you buy your books, and then I know there are translations out there, and I would heartily recommend, to anyone watching and listening to, find that translation if you speak English, if you speak French, great, and read this book because it's an important book in our culture today, and the timing is perfect. You're watching the Olympics, you care about Olympics, you're listening to this podcast. This is the time to continue to have this conversation that, I have reported on and dealt with for many years, and I'm honored to have done that, and so honored and pleased to be able to talk to you and have you as a guest on Milan Magic, our special
Mhm.
edition.
Mhm.
Gabby, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.